Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala ashrafil Anbiya wal Mursaleen Muhammadur Rasulullahs sallallahu alayhi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Tasliman kathiran kathira. Fama ba'du, my brothers and sisters, after the first revelation, which was the first 5 ayat of Surah Al-Alaq, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Iqra bismi rabbika alladhi khalaq, khalaqal insana min alaq. اقرأ وربك الأكرم الذي علم بالقلم علم الإنسان ما لم يعلم. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then the wahi stopped for a while. Now, wallahu alam, whether this was to make a very powerful impression on Nabi Sallallahu that he was getting this wahi and it stopped, so he misses it, he yearns for this connection with his Rabb Jalla Jalaluhu. But the ayat which the Mufassirin tell us, which were revealed after Surah Al-Iqra, after the first 5 ayat, were the ayat of Surah Al-Muzzammil and Surah Muddathir. Now these 3 sets of ayat, if you look at them, these are the manual for da'wah. These are the manual for the work of propagation of Islam, which was the purpose of the bi'asat, the creation, the sending, the birth of Rasulullahs. Now this formula can be written as Iqra, Qum, Qum. Iqra, Qum, Qum. Iqra bismi rabbika alladhi khalaq. Read in the name of your Rabb, who created all that exists. Ya ayyuhal muzzamilu qumil layla illa qalila nisfahu abin qus minhu qalila. O you wrapped in garments, Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, stand to pray all the night except for a little, half of it or less than that. And the third one is, Ya ayyuhal muddathir qum fa'anzir. O you Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, wrapped, enveloped in garments and sleeping, arise and warn the people. So the formula of success for the da'wat, for anyone who wants to present Islam to the world, is to acquire the knowledge first, and then to stand in the night and establish our connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then in the morning to talk to the people. Now, there is no da'wah without proper knowledge. Now obviously this does not mean that you have to become a great scholar, but definitely we need to have correct knowledge. Even if it is a little, must be correct knowledge. Islam is not the religion of mythology, of superstition, of grandmother's tales, of this so-called miracle and that so-called miracle. We are not a religion which is based on miracles. We are a religion which is based on facts, on verifiable facts. We are a religion which is based on dalail, evidences, proofs, and the dalil in Islam, the dalail are the Quran and the Sunnah, the Kitab of Allah and the practice of and the teachings of His Messenger Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This is Islam. Islam is not stories and fairy tales. So acquire knowledge, correct knowledge. Without correct knowledge, we cannot possibly propagate Islam, or you can't do anything. I mean, if you do not have correct knowledge about anything, you obviously cannot teach that. That cannot be beneficial to anybody. Second one is that after that comes our connection with Allah Subhanahu wa Taala. It's like your phone. First, the phone must be sound, right? There should not be anything wrong with the phone. The OS must work, the operating system must work, everything in all the hardware, software in the phone must be functional. After that, you have to charge the phone, right? The phone can be fully functional, it can be a brand new phone, absolutely perfect, straight from the factory, but if it has no charge, you still cannot use it. It still cannot be of any use to you, it's a brick. So the phone must be perfect, and then the phone should be charged. And once you charge the phone, then you need to use the phone to speak to people. Right? So this is a good example to illustrate this. So we acquire correct knowledge and then we stand in the night and we build our connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then in the morning we go out and we speak to the people. Now, Qiyamul Layl and Zikr are the food for the soul. They strengthen the dai in the work of dawah. Ibn Taymiyyah rahmatullah used to make zikr in the fields outside the masjid after Salatul Fajr. He used to walk until the sun rose, until it was time for Ishraq. He would walk and he would make zikr. Then they asked him, he said, "This is my breakfast." He said, "This is my breakfast. If I don't have it, my body will fail me and I will not be able to do my work." Now, consistency is essential to success. It is not something that you pray tahajjud on one day. It is a question of doing it day after day after day without a let up. Right? Consistently throughout your life. If you want to present Islam to the people, we have to connect ourselves to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through correct knowledge and through zuhud, so through zikr and fikr and standing in the night before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Without consistency, we cannot benefit from the effect of the action. Let me illustrate with a everyday example. Have you ever seen a traditional weighing scale in a shop in most of our so-called back home countries, India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, African countries, Middle East? If you go to what we in Urdu we call kirana shop, a provision shop, a shop which sells grains, rice, wheat, and so on and so forth. If you go to that shop, you will find there is a balance. There is something which we call it a balance. It's a weighing scale. It has two pans, one on either side of a pivot, hanging from a horizontal beam at the top. The weight measure is put into one pan, and the material being weighed is put into another pan, right? So the weight measure is put here, material is weighed here, and when it is equal to the weight measure, then the person sells it to you. Now there is a very, very important lesson to be learned in this. And the next time you go to buy rice or some other grain, notice what the seller does. Let me explain to you what you will see. What you may have seen many times, but hopefully you will notice it. So you go and you say to the person, "I want 20 kilos of rice," right? So what does he do? He takes a 20 kilo weight and he puts it into one pan, and this pan now sits flat on the countertop, and the other pan goes up in the air. Then he takes a scoop and he starts pouring rice into the other pan. As the pan fills, even when he has put in 15 kilos, 16 kilos, 18 kilos, 19 kilos, what do you see happening to the pans? One is sitting here on the countertop with a 20 kilo weight, and the other one is up in the air with 19 kilos, for example, of rice in it. What do you see happening to them? Nothing. Nothing, right? There's no change in the situation. This is down here, this is up here. The man has put in 15 kilos, 16 kilos, 18 kilos. Nothing happens. There is no change in the situation. The pan with the weight remains firmly on the countertop, and the other pan with the rice remains up in the air. Now, have you ever come across a situation where the man says to you, you can see I'm working hard, there is no result, why don't you go somewhere else? Right? It's not possible to get you 20 kilos of rice. We have to give up. Because you can see I'm trying, right? I'm making so much effort, but nothing is happening. It's still like this. So why don't you go somewhere else? Has this ever happened to you? It hasn't happened to you, it will never happen to you, because that is not how we function as human beings. The man does not stop putting rice into the pan just because he is not seeing any result to his efforts. He knows the result will come. And so he continues to put in rice with the scoop until he sees a small movement between the pans. And the pan with the rice now starts to descend, and this pan with the weight starts to go up. Once that happens and the pans are almost level with each other, the man changes his method of pouring rice. He does not use a scoop anymore. He takes the rice in his hand and he releases a few grains at a time. Right? Gently he drops a few grains, and then lo and behold, the pan with the rice descends to the countertop, and the pan with the weight is a little bit up, and the man gives you the rice, he puts a little bit more, so you feel happy that you're getting more than you paid for, and he gives you this rice. Now, why did I describe this thing to you? Because this taught me two very critical life lessons. These two life lessons, they apply to dawah obviously, but they also apply to anything in life. First lesson is, until 19 kilos nothing will happen. Until 19 kilos nothing will happen, nothing is supposed to happen. So if you are working and you find that nothing is happening, that's exactly how it should be. It's not something you despair, it's not despair about, it's not something that you lose hope for. That's how it should be, that's how it is supposed to be. The second lesson I learned was that the last few grains always make the difference. Last few grains always make the difference. Two lessons. Until 19 kilos nothing will happen. And the last few grains will always make the difference. That is called the tipping point. Both of these laws are equally true. So also in life, when 19 kilos of effort have gone into the issue, into dawah, into your career, into your whatever, right? The equivalent of 19 kilograms of effort has gone into that, and you start feeling discouraged, you start feeling, start losing hope because nothing is happening. It is good to remember and remind yourself that nothing is supposed to happen. So if nothing is happening, that's exactly how it is supposed to be. The one who understands this does not lose hope, does not lose energy, but he smiles in anticipation of reaching the last stage when he knows the pan will come down to the countertop. He knows that this has to happen. It is not a matter of, it's nothing unusual. This is how it is to be. And that's what Rasulullahs kept. He kept on doing his work. However, the Quraysh started mocking him and laughing at him, and they started now harassing him, including physically trying to harm him. Abu Jahl said, "Are you going to allow Muhammad ﷺ to rub his face in the dirt? If I see him doing it, I will stamp on his neck." Now he's talking about the sajda, na'udhu billah. So Rasulullah ﷺ used to pray in public near the Kaaba. So after some time he came and he started his salah, and Abu Jahl got up to carry out his threat. But as he came close to Rasulullah ﷺ, people saw him fall back and wave his hands in front of his face as if he was repulsing something, as if he was fighting against something. And then he fell down on his back, and then he scrambled up and he ran away. So people asked him what happened. He said, "I saw a trench of fire before me and flames and smoke, and I would have fallen into it." He said, "How is it that you didn't see it?" Rasulullah ﷺ said, "Those were angels, and if he had stepped forward, they would have torn him to pieces." So alhamdulillah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protects. When you are doing the work of the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we don't lose hope. We don't fear, we are not afraid. We make sure that we do the work of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's deen, the work of his dawah, purely for him and for his pleasure. We don't make it into a money-making racket. We don't make it into a source of funds for us. It is not a revenue stream. We got Islam free, we give it free. There's something called, even people use terms like commercial dawah, it's like halal pork. Right? It's an oxymoronic statement. Never call it that. There's no commercial dawah. It's either commerce or it is dawah. The dawah of Islam is to be done purely and purely for the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and in the following the sunnah of Muhammadur Rasulullahs, then you see the barakah that comes into your life. I'm not talking about people who are working for large dawah organizations, for governments of countries where there is dawah, which is a formal from the Ministry of Awqaf or something like this. I'm not talking about the imams of masajid who are getting a salary from the organization. All of this is alhamdulillah, inshallah, halal, there's no problem. I'm talking about people on the speaker circuit who are making money out of giving khutbahs. People who are who do the work of dawah, and they take money from people in order to teach them Quran, in order to teach them Salah, for example, in order to teach them the deen. This is something which I which is not the sunnah of Rasulullah, it is not the sunnah of any Nabi. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned this 8 or 9 times in the Quran, and Allah said they do not ask ajr from you. They don't ask for reward from you. Follow the sunnah of the Anbiya alayhi salam. This is the best way of presenting Islam to the world, right? So please, let's do that. Another one who tried to do things was Uqba bin Abi Mu'ayth. He dumped the intestines of a camel on the neck, on the blessed neck of Rasulullahs when Rasulullah was in sujood. Now Fatima radiallahu anha came running and she took them off and she cleaned her father's back. It is very damaging for children to see their parents humiliated before their eyes. When Rasulullah finished his salah, he made dua against these people and he said, "Oh Allah, punish Abu Jahl and punish Utbah bin Rabi'a and punish Shayba bin Rabi'a and punish Walid bin Utbah and punish Umayyah bin Khalaf and punish Uqba bin Abi Mu'ayth." And all of these were killed in Badr. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam prayed against them and all of them were killed in Badr. Another thing that they did with him was character assassination. They attack the character of the messenger to destroy the credibility of the message. Now this happens to this day. All of this stuff of cartoons and whatnot, absolutely shameful, despicable behavior. I don't react to any of that because it's not worth reacting to, right? When dogs bark, you don't bark back to the dog. So they are dogs and they are barking, so we don't have to worry about that. But this is an indicator. This is what they have done. People like them have done throughout the ages. They will continue to do that. Best thing to do, ignore it and present the actual beautiful character of Rasulullah before the people through our own actions, through our own behavior. That is important. So those who attack the character of Rasulullah or attack his hadiths, all of these people are among those who are trying to discredit the messenger so that the message itself can be discredited. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned this and Allah said, look, they are not against you but against your message. They are denying our ayat. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, قَدْ نَعْلَمُ إِنَّهُ لَيَحْزُنُكَ الَّذِي يَقُولُونَ فَإِنَّهُمْ لَا يُكَذِّبُونَكَ وَلَكِنَّ الظَّالِمِينَ بِآيَةِ اللَّهِ يَجْحَدُونَ. Allah said, and we know the grief which their words cause you, O Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but it is not you that they are denying, it is the ayat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala jalla jalaluhu. Allah says it is our ayat which they are denying, which means Allah says, I will take care of them, don't worry. It is not you that they deny, it is the ayat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, of the Quran, of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which they are denying, and that the zalimun, these are the people who are doing that. They are the wrongdoers and the polytheists who are doing this, and that is their. It's not that they are against you. I mean, they were against him also, but it was not personal enmity, which was not the driving force. The driving force was they did not like the message. They were against the message. They were against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In another place, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَلَقَدْ نَعْلَمُ أَنَّكَ يَضِيقُ صَدْرُكَ بِمَا يَقُولُونَ فَسَبِّحْ بِحَمْدِ رَبِّكَ وَكُن مِّنَ السَّاجِدِينَ وَاعْبُدْ رَبَّكَ حَتَّى يَأْتِيَكَ الْيَقِينَ. Indeed, we know, Ya Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that your breast is straitened, meaning your heart is aggrieved at what they say. Allah said, so glorify Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, glorify the praise of your Rabb, and be among those who prostrate, meaning make sujood to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and worship your Rabb until there comes to you certainty, which means death. So you continue with your work, you continue with what you do, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will take care of those people. Now, Waraka bin Nawfal predicted this. And as I mentioned to you earlier in the earlier lecture, Rasulullah was very surprised when Waraka bin Nawfal predicted this. He said that when your people eject you and they banish you from your land, I will support you. And Rasulullah was very surprised. He said, my people will banish me. Now imagine, here is a man who was the number one popular figure in the society, right? They called him As-Sadiqul Amin. There was huge respect for him. He had huge influence out of proportion to his age and to his wealth and so on and so forth. These were the things that gave people prominence. He did not. He was not. He was young compared to many others, and he was not wealthy at all. Yet he had huge influence. Now all of this, and he said that these same people who are doing all this for me, they are going to throw me out. They are going to eject me. They are going to banish me. And Waraqah bin Nawfal said, yes, they will do that, because this is what people have always done to those who came with the message that you have come with. Right? So Waraqah bin Nawfal, radiallahu anhu, Rasulullah said he was a Muslim and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give him Jannah. So he was the cousin of Khadijatul Kubra, our mother radiallahu anha. So he said this. Now that was because of the message. So this is when you feel today, when we make da'wah and you feel and you find resistance and so on, it is nothing to be discouraged about. It is nothing new. It is nothing unusual. It is not happening because of you. It is happening because of the message, and this will happen to anyone who tries to propagate this message. So this is very important for us to keep in mind. Now in Arabia, I guess the same situation applies to this day. The marketplace used to be the place where the like Hyde Park corner or something, right? You stand on a soapbox and you speak. So the marketplace used to be a place where the best of poets and speakers of Arabia would come and they would present their work. It was mostly a society which was very oral and verbal. They didn't publish books and so on, but people had prodigious memories. They could memorize hundreds of lines of poetry, thousands of lines of poetry, and huge sections of text. So they would come and they would recite, and they would do that. And these people had fan followings, like today, like like pop singers or something, huge fan followings. The best of the poems used to be hung up on the walls of the Kaaba. So this was they honored the poet. So when he had finished reciting, it would be written down, and this would be hung on the wall of the Kaaba to honor the poet. Rasulullah used to go there, and he would present his message. Right? He would go there, and he would say, "Qulu la ilaha illallah tuflihu." He would say, go and he say, say la ilaha illallah and become successful. So he would do that in the middle of all these people. Now imagine the kind of confidence it takes to do something like this. Just think about that, right? The whole place is hostile to you. You know this, yet you go and you stand there and you talk about that. What is the kind of confidence? That confidence can come only from one thing, which is commitment, total and complete commitment to the cause, and a connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala jalla jalaluhu. Only then will the fear of the people be driven out of your mind. Otherwise, the fear of people, I mean, I can sort of think about, imagine, I would never be able to do that. I'm just thinking that if I was in that position, what I would do. I'd probably turn around and run like hell. Rabi'a bin Haddad said, I saw a man walking behind him and telling the people, don't believe him. See, imagine this is happening to him as he is doing that. This man is walking behind him and saying, the man sort of walking behind him, he is saying to them, don't believe him, don't believe this man, right? He is not speaking the truth. Now, Rabi'a bin Haddad, he said, I asked the people who that man was, and they said he is his uncle Abu Lahab. Right? Now, think about that. If somebody is saying something negative about you, and this person is your friend, it is the opposite. If somebody is not your friend and they say something positive about you, somehow that positive statement becomes even more credible because it is coming from someone who is not your friend. So it is the unexpected. Somebody who is not your friend says something positive, it becomes credible. At the same time, similarly, somebody who is your friend, if that person is saying something critical, then it becomes even more, within quotes, credible, meaning people say, well, it must be wrong, this person must be bad because his own friend is saying that. Now, when that own friend is his uncle, which is somebody like his father, is criticizing him and he's saying, don't believe him, imagine what kind of damage it does to the character of that person. And this is how Rasulullah was spiritually and mentally troubled and tortured by the Quraysh. People said, this is his uncle is saying that. But Alhamdulillah, the Anbiya had hearts that could withstand the strain of being rejected over and over and over. And they would still keep giving their message. That they did not leave, and they did not they didn't wait for encouragement. Even without encouragement, they still continued to communicate the message, and this is a sign of their commitment to the whole cause. So Rasulullah used to continue with his dawah and would not say anything to his uncle. Now there is a big lesson also in this, which is, and we see this also in the story of Musa alayhi salam in the court of Firaun, which is that when you are doing your work and you're talking about the greatness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you're doing the work of dawah. This also is true for other things. When you're doing your work and somebody is criticizing you, it is very counterproductive to engage with that person who's criticizing you, because then you get sucked into that argument and your own message will suffer, because instead of communicating the message, now you are busy answering that person, and obviously they are making false allegations, but you're saying, no, this is not like that is not like this, and so on and so forth, all of which is a waste of your time. Instead of that, you could have been gainfully employed doing something useful and not falling into the trap of this person saying all this stuff. It doesn't help you in one way or the other, right? So it's very important to ensure that that we don't fall into these these are actually ego traps, if you think about it. Why do we engage with that person? Because we feel somehow hurt. So ignore, just do your work. You came to communicate and tell people something good for them, just go do that. Al-Walid bin Mughira, one of the elders of the Quraysh, he told the leaders of the community, the season of Hajj is coming, so let us unify our opinion about this associate of ours, this meaning Rasulullah ﷺ, and let us not contradict our opinion. So let's not, somebody says something, somebody says something else. So the people said, tell us what you have in mind, and we will abide by it. Okay? So Al-Walid bin Mughira, he said, well, so he said, no, you tell me what you think. So they said, let us say that he is a soothsayer, he is a magician, he is a shaman, he is insane, he is a poet, he is a sorcerer. But Walid bin Mughira said no. He denied all that. Then he said, by God, there is splendor in what he speaks. Right? Now think about this. Here are people, this is where the issue of kufr, the issue of kufr is that it is, despite recognizing the truth, Shaitan still makes you deny it, and this is what they did. So Al-Walid bin Mughira, he says, by God, there is splendor in what he speaks. He is like a palm tree that gives much fruit. So he is giving an example of something which is hugely beneficial. In their culture, it was something which is massively beneficial. So he says, no, just say that he's a sorcerer who comes between a man and his wife and his sons and his fathers and his tribe. Right? So he says, don't say all this, that he is a soothsayer, he is insane or poet. Say he's a sorcerer, and that he will that he comes between people and their families. Meaning that if you listen to him, your family will break up. Now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned this story of what Al-Walid was doing. Allah said, ذَرْنِي وَمَنْ خَلَقْتُ وَحِيدًا وجعلت له مالا ممدودا وبنين شهودا ومهدت له تمهيدا ثم يطمع أن أزيد كلا إنه كان لآياتنا عنيدا سأرهقه صعودا إنه فكر وقدر فقتل كيف قدر ثم قتل كيف قدر ثم نذر ثم عبس وبصر ثم أدبر واستكبر فقال إن هذا إلا سحر يؤثر إن هذا إلا قول البشر سأصليه سقر. Allah said, that this man was saying, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, leave me alone to deal with whom I created alone, without any means, any help. And Allah is mentioning here, Al-Walid bin Mughira al-Makhzumi. This was the father of Khalid bin Walid, for those of you interested in history. This is Khalid bin Walid's father. And then Allah said, and leave me alone to deal with whom I created alone, without any help from anybody. And then granted him resources in abundance. This was one of the elders of Quraysh. He was a millionaire, wealthy man, a lot of power. And then granted him resources in abundance and children to be by his side, and made life smooth and comfortable for him. After all that, he desires that I should give more. Nay, verily he has been stubborn and opposing our ayat. I shall oblige him to climb a slippery mountain in the hellfire called As-Saud, or to face severe torment. Verily he thought and plotted. Allah is describing what Al-Walid bin Mughira's behavior. Allah says, verily he thought and he plotted, so let him be cursed. How he plotted, and once more let him be cursed. How he plotted, and then he thought, then he frowned, and he looked in a bad-tempered way. Then he turned back and was proud. And then he said, this is nothing but magic from that of old. This is nothing but the word of a human being. Allah said, I will cast him into the hellfire. It's a very interesting story with regard to this Al-Walid and these ayat. And that is that when Khalid bin Walid radiallahu anhu was going to Medina with Amr ibn al-As radiallahu anhu, both of them were close friends and they were going to Medina to accept Islam. Amr ibn al-As asked Khalid bin Walid, he said, tell me, you are going to accept Islam, then you will believe and you will have to recite and you will have to believe in what Allah revealed about your father. Right? So are you ready? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said your father is in the hellfire and Allah cursed your father. So are you saying that you are going to accept Islam and you will read this Quran and you will read these words and you will believe in them and you're bearing witness to that? So Khalid bin Walid, this shows these people how sincere they were. Khalid bin Walid said, let me read this again. And he recited these ayat. Now when he is reciting these ayat, imagine he's going in his heart over them and he's seeing in his heart, he's seeing how does my heart accept this word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When he finished the recitation, he said to Amr ibn al-As, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, Ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. He said, I believe in this, and I believe in Allah, and I believe in Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And then they both went to Medina, and they accepted Islam. This shows the sincerity of these people. They believed the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The sad, tragic thing is that people like his father and others, who acknowledged that this word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was the truth. They saw that, they acknowledged that, they recognized that, but they refused to believe it and they refused to follow it and they continued to oppress Rasulullahs and continued to oppose it. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to enable us and make us among those who know the truth and who stick with the truth. Allahumma arinal haqqa haqqan warzuqna ijtiba' wa arinal batila batilan warzuqna ijtinaba. O Allah, show us the truth as the truth and grant that we follow it, and show us the batil and falsehood as falsehood and grant that we stay away from it. Wa sallallahu ala nabiyil kareem wa alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in bi rahmatika ya arhamar rahimin.